Hello, welcome to another Genealogy Coffee Break brought to you by us, the librarians and archivists of Center for Jewish History. I'm J.D. Arden. Next week, another one of my colleagues will present another Genealogy Coffee Break, so please stay tuned to our Facebook page or mailing list and be in touch. This week, I'm happy to bring to everybody some helpful tips and suggestions if you are a genealogy researcher looking at records in Polish or in Russian. A couple weeks ago, I did a coffee break about different alphabet systems. So to follow up, this should also be a helpful addition to that session. You can look up all of our old genealogy coffee breaks that we've already done by going to our Facebook page, where you are now, Facebook page of Center for Jewish History. Find the link to videos and then Genealogy Coffee Break. So keep in mind also that we do free Zoom workshops for community groups. Doesn't have to be Jewish. We can talk about genealogy. We can talk about taking care of old documents and photos. So write to us at gi@cjh.org if you or someone you know might be interested in doing a Zoom workshop. For those researchers who also need a little extra help on the computer, we're happy also to do one-on-one Zooms so that we can help you as if you were coming to visit us in person in the library. To get started, 3 basic points that I'll cover today where you can get some skills, get some help, prepare yourself to be working with and looking at old records in Polish or Russian. If you aren't already, it's a great idea to join the Facebook group Genealogical Translations. I've mentioned them before about getting a translation. You can also, I'll show you other tools on that Facebook group page that you can use. I'll mention FamilySearch.org that you may all know as a database to look up records. You can also navigate to the wiki pages of Family Search that also have helpful tools. And of course, I've mentioned before, the great resource of stevemorse.org can be helpful. If you use your mobile phone a lot, it's also a good idea to download the Google Translate app. That can be helpful. And then at the end, I'll mention general online sources of information that can help you do some basic learning that can help in your research. So what I'm talking about today is not if you need something translated in full, but for example, if you had a dozen or 24 pages that you're looking through, and it would be a big waste of time for you to ask for a translation of every single page that might be relevant to your research. So the tools that I'll show you today can help you be empowered to figure out beforehand what language are you dealing with. That will save you time. Where can you find the relevant information? And even if, like most of us, you don't have time to fully learn the Polish language or the Russian language, what you can do to give yourself a leg up in your research and save time in the long run. So on the Facebook group page, Genealogical Translations, instead of looking at the discussion page where everyone has their requests for translations, if you click on announcements and then click Helpful Resources, you will navigate to a link to a document with lots of helpful tools. The main ones that I'm pointing out today are, first of all, how you could determine, looking at old handwriting documents, what's Russian, what's Polish. That you could also review in the languages and alphabets session that we did in the coffee break 2 weeks ago, and how you can save time by knowing beforehand, for example, what a name will look like in Russian script before you start searching a document to see if it's relevant to you, and some other tools. So these are the Russian and Polish tools, just a few of those listed on this document. There's a lot more if you want to go more in depth. This is a great place to start. You can see at the bottom on the inset in red the formula that all of the birth, marriage, death records that you might find from Russian Empire records written out in longhand script all start with the same formulaic sentence. There you can see in Polish it's pronounced działo się w, and in Russian состоялось в, meaning it occurred in, and then they go on to mention the town. So this is a good clue. You can look for that big uppercase D or the uppercase C looking letter in Russian to know, first of all, if you're dealing with Russian or Polish. That will save you time. Here's an example of a page of a birth record in Russian. Quickly, a couple clues that you can use to determine what the language is. If it's very messy and you can't really tell, you can see that in Russian, more or less, especially more recent records, there are no letters with any dots on them, or the only accent marks. Once in a while, you see this letter that looks like a U or a backwards N with a little squiggly line over it, or a little smiley face, little smile looking mark. That you sometimes might see, or you might see those horizontal lines over a couple letters, but more or less there's no dots, there's nothing that looks like J or any accent marks. So that's one quick way you can tell it's Russian. Other clues that you can use besides the alphabets, which we've already talked about, is to know that this looks like a really long, big, complicated document, but in fact, it has very, very basic, small amount of information that just bureaucratically was written out in full sentences. So whereas it wouldn't occur to us today not to write, the year 1865, we would write it automatically as 1865. For whatever reason, the clerks in the Russian Empire chose to have this rule that they wrote out 1865 in words longhand. So a lot of the space of this document is taken up just by the extension of events into fully written words. The formula is always the same. It starts with, it occurred in the city of whatever, on the date, whatever, in the year, and then you'll have the year written out. And you'll notice something helpful is that the names of the important people to this record are written either in a little bit larger script, or sometimes they might be underlined. So you don't need to speak Russian if you're just glancing through and you want to look at the names that are mentioned in this document. They're usually going to be in a little bit larger size or sometimes underlined. This happens to be a birth record. If you wanted to learn more, we can recommend reference books where you can have a map basically of what the formula of the sentences are. You can see that in every case, someone comes to the record office, they mention that person's name first, then they say what that person is reporting. In this case, they mention the wife and the mother's name and her maiden name, and then finally the name of the child. So without having to learn and read Russian, you can get a sense by the layout and how many names are listed, what type of document this is and where the important names are. Here's an example, a death record in Polish. So look for the clues. First of all, you see it starts with that nice cursive D. So you know, you can confirm that it is indeed Polish with that D starting the record. You can see all these dots, right? Dotted I, dotted J. In Polish, there are hooks and accent marks over C, N, O, S, Z. So with just a quick glance, you can save yourself time by determining that this is indeed Polish. If you did want to seek a translation, you can save you and a translator time by knowing that you're looking for a Polish translator, not Russian, for example. Another quick side note, other clues, often when Jewish people were signing the documents, either if they could not write in the majority language of that empire, and they were used to, of course, signing their name in the Hebrew alphabet. Sometimes they might not have a signature and they would be referred to as illiterate, meaning that they weren't able to sign in Russian or Polish. You can see, though, in this example, the signatures are in Hebrew, and then the clerk, the same clerk who wrote the document, has written their names in the Latin alphabet to the left of the Hebrew signature. If, for example, you don't really speak Polish, you can also save yourself time if you can read Hebrew, or if it's easier for you to look for a signature in Hebrew, that's another way that you can confirm who the names mentioned. Here, Moshe Sacher and Moshe Yofe, you can see are the two signatures repeated slightly differently in Polish. Mowszo, Mowszo, is in this case how Moshe has been transliterated. So it's good if you also can read Hebrew, use that to your advantage. This is what the wiki page of Family Search looks like. FamilySearch.org/wiki is the page where you can find these research guides on a range of topics. If you scroll to the bottom of the page where you'll find research tutorials, you can find, among other things, an hour-long video about the Russian alphabet and an hour-long video about the different partitions of Poland alternately occupied by the Russian Empire, Austro-Hungarian Empire, Prussian Empire, if you want some geographic orientation. If you're learning Polish a little bit, like I am, the title of that video, Co kraj to običaj, means different countries have different ways of doing things. And that's exactly a good model for us learning how to navigate these records. SteveMorse.org, I mentioned in the Language and Alphabets video. You can use these tools either for Hebrew script, Russian script. It's helpful also in this case to see all the whole alphabet typed out in front of you so that you know what a name might look like, but you also know what letters you might expect to see if you're trying to figure out if a document is in Russian. So that's an easy free website. Because most of these records, late 1800s, early 1900s, are handwritten, it pays to give yourself a leg up by knowing what the key names will look like in handwritten script. You can also use Google Translate, right? I know that a lot of you researchers feel overwhelmed with the idea of learning the entire Polish or Russian language, especially if you're only using it for genealogy research. It wouldn't be a good use of time to say that you're going to learn everything, but you could use Google Translate just to learn the few keywords that are going to be very important to you. So, for example, if you're looking through links to records that might be on Jewish Gen, JRI Poland, or Polish National Archive, digitized documents, or FamilySearch.org. Basically, in general, three main types of records that you'll be looking through would be birth, marriage, and death. It really saves you time if you learn to recognize those three words. Sometimes grammatically, there might be a couple different letters at the end, but if you learn to recognize those three terms, then, for example, if you get to the start of a handwritten set of records in a book and you see in large letters at the top birth or marriage or death, one of those three words, you save yourself time skipping over what you don't need to look through versus the precise record or set of records that you are looking for. Small note that Jewish, in this case of record groups, is based on the Polish version of Moses as an adjective. So if you're trying to determine if records are Jewish, as in this example on the website Szukaj w archiwach, SZUKAJWARCHIWACH, which means look in the archives. That site, as you can see, this word Mojżeszowe underneath the records tags it as Jewish. So that also can save you time to learn that basic term. And here are our new friends on that right-hand column: zgony, urodzenia, małżeństwa, meaning death, birth, marriage. So even if nothing else, if you just have a little reference sheet, some notes that you made, that this word with Z means death records. If it starts with U, urodzenia, it means birth records. And if it has an M, małżeństwa, it's marriage, right? It's helpful if you can learn a little bit how the letters sound and the phonetics, but at a minimum, it can help you. And I've seen researchers struggle with this. It would save them a lot of time beforehand just to learn those three basic words in Polish. To show what you could also play around with yourselves on Google Translate, the equivalent words in Russian. That's what they look like. If you are looking at Russian records and you see a big heading at the top of the page, if you can just kind of memorize what those words look like, that will also save you time in identifying what's a birth record, what's a set of marriage records, or death. The quick side note also is that the term used in the case of these record groups, if it's Jewish specific, is the word that looks like that. So my last point that I'd like to encourage all of you to take some time to give yourself a leg up is to use Google Translate and use resources on the web like how do you pronounce the Polish alphabet? You can just Google what is the Polish alphabet? How do you pronounce the Polish alphabet? This really, I think, is important to save a lot of time and confusion. If you just learn the basics, not all of the Polish language, but just a few basics like the letter C is pronounced how we would write TZ, combinations of CI or CH are both pronounced, CZ are both pronounced like CH. The Polish letter W is equivalent to how we would write V in English, SH, SZ, and especially J as an equivalent basically to Y. So there's no such Polish name as Andrzej. That name is Andre, like would make more sense. If you're looking for a woman named Jenta, that written in Polish is going to start with a J. And these four examples I brought because it can be a, a source of confusion, but also it could waste a lot of time and you might miss relevant records. But if you figure out beforehand that the letter C is how we would write in America TZ, so someone who in America is Mr. Katz, if that name is written phonetically in Poland, it could be written with a C, K-A-C. And you can see in the examples in either side of the slide could be different enough that I've seen researchers miss relevant names because they were working with our English-speaking American idea of how a name would be spelled, but Katz, Kaczynski, Korwicki, or Brzezinski, how we might recognize those names in Polish or with some extra letters at the end because of the sentence grammar, often could look different enough that you might easily miss it. So even though in America it's not realistic to expect that we all learn the phonetic system of all the language groups, of all the immigrants that come to make up American society, and it's not realistic to pronounce all of those names in the original pronunciation. If you just learn that the letter C, for example, in a Polish name is ending the name Itsky, like Korwicki, or a lot of other names, then you can save yourself time by knowing the different spellings that you might look for, right? So especially cats, KAC, or maybe depending on the context, it might have an A on the end. That could be an easy name to miss. And there are others. So, take small steps, learn a little bit of the language that you're looking up records in. And in the long run, it will enrich your experience, your research, how empowered you are to use resources efficiently, and it will be worthwhile. If you have questions now, you can always type them in the comment box. We here on staff, JD and Moria and our other colleagues, even hang around on Facebook for a while after we finish this video to wrap up and answer your questions. So if you get them in now, we will still answer them. If you have more to say, other suggestions, or you think of a question later, you can always email us at gi@cjh.org. There is the tiny link if you want to sign up for email updates, if you're interested in our other programs, talks, and news from Center for Jewish History. And of course, if you're able, please consider making even a small donation. It helps us and it gives us encouragement to continue these types of programs that we're happy to make available for free to everybody. So take care, everyone. Be well, and join us next week, also at 3:30 on Tuesday, where you can catch another live Genealogy Coffee Break. Until then, bye-bye.